this episode, we're going to focus on exam day tactics and mental models that help you stay calm and make good decisions when you feel time pressure. This is not about cramming facts or turning the exam into a trick, and it is definitely not about having a special personality type that always stays relaxed. It is about having a few reliable ways to think that prevent you from spiraling when you hit a confusing question. The GCIL exam is designed to test incident leadership decision-making, which means it often gives you incomplete information, competing priorities, and choices that all look partially right. When you are new to cybersecurity, your brain tries to solve that discomfort by rushing, guessing, or overthinking, and none of those helps. The goal here is to give you a small set of stable mental habits you can use repeatedly. Slow down in the right moments. Identify what the question is truly asking. Eliminate answers that violate incident principles, and choose the option that best fits a disciplined response. If you can do that consistently, you do not need to be perfect, you need to be steady. A helpful starting mental model is to treat every question as a scenario about trust and control, because incident leadership is always about restoring trust in systems while maintaining control of the response. When a question mentions new evidence, your first thought should be what trust boundary might have been crossed and what control you need to regain. That control might be containment, credential revocation, segmentation, or communication discipline, depending on the scenario. This model helps because it prevents you from chasing random details and instead pushes you toward the purpose of incident response. It also keeps you from confusing investigation with action, because the exam will often include tempting options that sound technical but do not restore control. If you are stuck, ask yourself which option increases clarity and reduces attacker leverage without creating unnecessary harm. In most incident scenarios, the best step is the one that stops ongoing damage while preserving your ability to learn what happened. This trust and control lens works across credential incidents, cloud incidents, supply chain issues, and ransomware situations. Another strong exam day model is timeline thinking, which means you mentally place events in sequence and ask what must have happened before what. Many questions describe symptoms, like unusual logins, encrypted files, or an alert about policy changes, and the exam tests whether you can infer what phase of an incident you are in. If you can place the incident in a phase, you can choose actions that match that phase. For example, if you are in an early phase, you prioritize containment and scoping, not long-term redesign. If you are in a late phase, you focus on recovery choices and preventing reinfection, not only on collecting initial indicators. Timeline thinking also helps you avoid being distracted by the last thing mentioned in the question, which is a common test-taking mistake. Many scenarios include a final sentence that is emotionally urgent, like a deadline or a complaint, and the exam wants to see if you still make a disciplined decision. You do not ignore urgency, but you decide in sequence rather than in panic. A third mental model is the hub-and-spoke model for identity and access, which is especially useful because many incidents expand through central identity systems. When you read a question that includes logins, access changes, or multiple services being impacted, ask whether a central identity provider is a hub that connects to many spokes. If so, an action that revokes sessions, resets credentials, or constrains privileged access can have an outsized protective effect. This model also helps you recognize when an incident might not be isolated to the first system mentioned. For example, a compromised email account may lead to password resets across many other services, and a compromised cloud identity may lead to broad resource creation or data access. On exam day, this can guide elimination. If an answer focuses narrowly on one application while ignoring the identity hub, it may be incomplete. The best answers often address the hub first when the hub is implicated, because that reduces the attacker's ability to move. This model keeps you thinking in terms of blast radius, not just the first alert. A related model is the blast radius triangle, which is a simple way to estimate scope using 3 points: what is affected, what privileges are involved, and what data or services depend on it. When you see a scenario, you can quickly ask which accounts or systems are involved, whether those accounts or systems have privileged control, and what critical functions depend on them. The triangle is useful because it produces a risk-focused scope without requiring perfect inventories. If the privileges are high and the dependencies are central, you treat the incident as higher severity even if you have limited evidence. If the privileges are low and dependencies are limited, you can prioritize monitoring and controlled containment rather than disruptive shutdowns. On the exam, this helps you choose answers that match severity, because the test often includes options that are either too extreme or too mild. The triangle helps you select the action that is proportional to likely impact. It also helps you justify your choice mentally, which reduces second-guessing. Now we shift from mental models to tactics for reading questions, because exam performance is not only knowledge, it is execution. A strong tactic is to identify the task verb in the question, because the question might ask what you should do first, what you should communicate, what you should prioritize, or what you should avoid. Different task verbs imply different response priorities. If the question asks what to do first, you look for immediate containment or risk reduction steps. If it asks what to do next, you look for validation, scoping, or recovery sequencing. If it asks what to communicate, you look for accurate, non-speculative messaging that matches the audience. If it asks which control would have prevented the issue, you think in terms of the relevant failure point, like weak authentication, excessive trust, misconfiguration, or poor segmentation. Many wrong answers become obvious when they do not match the verb. This tactic is simple, but under stress people skip it and then wonder why they chose an answer that felt reasonable but did not answer the actual question. Another tactic is to use elimination by violation, meaning you eliminate choices that break core incident response principles. For example, answers that destroy evidence unnecessarily, that delay containment when active harm is happening, or that rely on assumptions without verification are often wrong. Answers that communicate speculation as fact, that blame users inappropriately, or that introduce major disruption without justification are also often wrong. In ransomware scenarios, answers that ignore backup protection and identity compromise risks are often incomplete. In cloud scenarios, answers that focus on the provider fixing customer misconfiguration are often wrong because shared responsibility places configuration control on the customer. In supply chain scenarios, answers that ignore scoping and coordination and instead treat it as a single system malware cleanup can be incomplete. In credential scenarios, answers that reset one password but ignore session revocation and access validation can be incomplete. This elimination method helps because you do not need to know the perfect answer immediately. You just need to remove options that contradict disciplined response behavior. Time management on exam day is also a decision-making skill, because running out of time can cause you to rush the questions that you actually know. One effective habit is to answer the questions you can answer quickly first, because that builds confidence and preserves time for the harder ones. Another habit is to avoid falling into a deep analysis hole on one question, because the exam is designed so that some questions will feel ambiguous. If you are stuck, choose the best answer you can using your mental models and move on, trusting that you have a consistent approach. If you have the ability to flag or revisit, you can return later with a calmer mind. But the key is not to sacrifice many easy points for one hard question. A calm exam strategy is not about speed. It is about steady pacing and avoiding emotional reactions to one confusing scenario. When you keep moving, you reduce stress, and reduced stress improves accuracy. This is a self-reinforcing loop that you can create deliberately. Another practical exam day mental habit is to keep your language internal and simple, because complex self-talk increases anxiety. Instead of narrating long explanations in your head, you can use short cues like contain, scope, validate, recover, communicate. Those are not steps you say out loud. They are anchors that remind you of the incident life cycle. When a question appears, you can quickly ask which anchor is most relevant given the phase and the task verb. This reduces cognitive load because your brain is not trying to invent a framework while also solving the question. It also helps you keep consistent, because consistency is what produces reliable scores across varied question types. The exam will try to pull you into details, but your anchors keep you at the decision level the exam cares about. Beginners often think they must recall every term to succeed, but decision-level stability often matters more than perfect vocabulary. Clear internal cues make that stability easier. One more model that helps specifically with tricky answer choices is the principle of least regret, which is a way to choose when multiple options seem plausible. Least regret means you choose the action that, if you are wrong, causes the smallest harm and still moves the incident toward control and clarity. For example, revoking suspicious sessions and requiring re-authentication often has lower regret than taking a full environment offline because it reduces attacker access with less business disruption. Restricting an exposed cloud resource often has lower regret than ignoring it while you debate whether it was actually accessed, because exposure is ongoing risk. Communicating a cautious update that distinguishes known facts from investigation has lower regret than making a confident statement that could later be proven false. Least regret does not mean timid. It means disciplined and proportional. On the exam, least regret often points to answers that are measured, evidence-driven, and aligned to incident priorities. It is a powerful tool for breaking ties when you are uncertain. As we close, remember that calm GCIL decision-making is a skill you can execute, not a mood you have to feel. Use the trust and control lens to keep decisions aligned with incident purpose. Use timeline thinking to place the scenario in phase and avoid reacting only to the last detail. Use hub-and-spoke identity thinking and the blast radius triangle to estimate scope and severity quickly. Use the task-verb tactic to answer the question that was actually asked, and use elimination by violation to remove choices that contradict core response principles. Manage time by keeping pace, using simple internal anchors, and choosing least regret when options are close. If you do these things consistently, your decisions will feel calmer because they are structured, even when the scenarios are messy. That steadiness is exactly what the exam is trying to measure, and it is also what good incident leaders bring to real incidents.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.